Hello, hello. Julie Bartkus here, along with my fantastic co-host, Michael Tasner. And boy, have we missed you. But it's good to be back. We're here at a new time. And I think this will be our time going forward. But today, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we progress, but we want to talk to you about change and how to deal with changes and how to inspire other people to make changes in your life. So I think that's going to be a really good hot topic. And I'm always asking people, like, how many of you are going through tremendous change right now? And everybody's like, yes, 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 yes. And they write me a long list about different things they're going through with change. So I'm sure that you hear some of that as well, Michael. And, you're in a business of change, marketing, right? We've always got to be changing things up.
Definitely. And I mean, a lot of, excuse me, a lot of the calls that I take they're almost identical lately this is how we used to do things. So we used to do open houses. We used to have our center would just be full.
Right.
I met a gentleman yesterday afternoon, and it was like your website is outdated, like everything. He's like, well, we haven't touched anything in like 10 years. We've never had to do that. I said, and I think I used the exact phrase, well, we've got to change everything, because if you want to get to the next level, or if you want to even get back to even, you gotta get some changes.
Yeah, and what do they say? It's like what got you to this point of success in your life isn't going to get you to the next place. So you've got to shift, you've got to change strategy. But I know that change is so hard for people. And for me, I feel like it's been a constant part of my life. But I remember one time I was teaching a seminar very early on in my career, and I requested one thing of my audience members. And this one thing led to minutes and minutes of moaning and groaning and complaining. And it was a really interesting exercise in looking at how people's mindsets get really negative in the midst of change sometimes. And this one simple request that I made was everybody get up and move to a different seat, find a different spot to sit, find a different person to sit next to. And it was like, oh, and this really triggered for me, change is so tough for so many people, for so many reasons.
No, definitely. And I don't know how many times I've done those exercises, and you look around and people are like, you got to be kidding me. And
we got to do this.
It's the same thing. I mean, we're creatures of habit, and
truth.
It's just you want to continue to, you drive the same way to your center, for example, that you go all the time, and you stop and grab your coffee at the same place typically. And some reason I seem to change up my day way too often, but there's still certain habits that you're always going to follow. And I don't know. I personally, I don't know about you. I know you do a lot of this, but I've been just studying just the whole notion of habits, and just tweaking the smallest of habits, and kind of also adding in the whole compounding effect of, okay, if you're doing it's that whole, I mean, I've seen infographics and things like that of, if you're doing things 1% better, 1% different every day, what does that equal during the course of the year? And so, I mean, I've seen all of those, but it's really interesting if you start to study just certain habits and start to realize, well, some of those things aren't going to get you to where you'd like to go.
Yeah, and you have to think that the habits really define us, right? I mean, they define the level of success we're getting. They define, where we're at right now. But when I look at habits, I'm like, well, where did these habits come from? And I think even about in our childcare programs, how we're really, habitually training the children, teaching the children, nap time is here, lunchtime is at this time, going home time is at this time. And I know habits, especially for our young folks, really breeds a sense of security, right? In the routine, they get secure in that. Dogs get secure in their routines. But I think there also needs to be a teaching point of flexibility and change. So then as we grow, we know that, hey, you know what? Change is going to be a part of life too. And this is something that we have to embrace, because we often hear owners saying, I switched somebody to work in a different classroom, or we need coverage over here. And they don't want to make that change. They don't want to be flexible. So it's really about having a culture of change with everything that you're doing to let people know that, hey, change is good, and change is going to be part of our growth and part of our plan and part of our strategy.
There's a phrase that I've used in many different forms that I heard from an earlier mentor that says, what is the exact phrase? If you dislike change, you'll dislike irrelevance even more.
Mm.
And it is simply like, this is a game of change. And I mean, one of the advantages of owning your own business, for example, or if you're a director, that, I mean, kind of being that head honcho along with the owners, for example, to be able to move the needle and to actually put things into action. So if you're seeing things, you're like, well, this just isn't going to get us to the direction, or this isn't going to move us to that path that we want.
Yeah.
It warrants the perfect time to start to look at what needs to be changed, what can you do differently, what should you be doing differently, and start to put those steps in place.
Yeah, and it's so easy, too easy just to stay a creature of routine and habit. And I know I do this in my life too. And sometimes I surprise myself how much routine I get into when ever since I was born, I can remember just life just changing, but it's really important that we look at routines of change and how do we incorporate that into our programs and into our lives. And one simple example is even during a staff meeting, challenge everybody, do like I did many, many years ago, and challenge everybody to sit in a different seat. And even more so, as leaders, directors, and owners, sit in a different spot every staff meeting. When you come in, find 2 new people who are going to be on each side of you. So find ways that you can break the routine and really show people that you're embracing change.
Love it. Love it. And I know you've got are you doing a master class? What are you doing tomorrow? I know you've got some stuff.
Yeah. We are doing in our childcare business success group an Attract Staff Fast masterclass. Say that fast. But we've had a lot of people signing up for this free masterclass that I'm going to do, and it hit me last, a couple weeks ago when I was doing my meditations and visualizations, and I started doing some writing. And I really believe that a lot of truth and strategy gets revealed through writing and through journaling. So I was doing some writing, and all of a sudden it's like my hand was going Attract Staff Fast Masterclass, hidden superpower. You don't even recognize it. And I'm like, you know what? Dang, you're right. Whatever I was getting, during my writing, I was like, you're right, because we've had somebody come to one of our programs, and within an hour, this was Heather Warren, she reported that she attracted the most ideal staff member who she's been looking for over 2 years on and off. And then I looked back at some other testimonials and reviews that we have, and I was like, wow, okay, maybe there's something here. And when the universe hits me up with something, I'm like, all right, who am I to deny this? I just have to walk forward in faith that this is something that I'm supposed to do. So we brought it to life, and we're going to be facilitating it tomorrow in my closed Facebook group. And there's a wait list that you could sign up for at childcarebusinesssuccess.com.
Perfect.
If for some reason tomorrow doesn't work, we'll let you know about some other opportunities to tune into this class.
Let me throw the URL
Track them
up
fast
here.
and keep them long.
I like it. I mean, it's constantly the 2 things that we keep hearing are staff and enrollments. Staff, enrollments. I mean, and there's other things of, planning, and there's always topics that you and I are hearing about, and there's always open challenges. But
right.
It's a people business.
Absolutely.
So if you don't have amazing people, as you would say, dreamy people, I don't think I used that phrase and gave you credit yesterday. I'm like,
stealing my words.
No, I gave you credit actually on a little video I was doing, because I don't remember what video I think I was talking about the habits of 7-figure centers.
Oh, nice.
So what is the difference between a 6-figure center, a 7-figure center, and we work with a handful of 8-figure centers.
Nice.
And the interesting thing is that there's a lot of similarities between 7 and 8, almost identical. One of them definitely was staff. And if you are constantly worrying about your staff, and I see these messages every day in all these different Facebook groups, your group, my group, other groups.
See, and this is the thing. So let's talk about this for a second, because this is a really interesting paradigm to me, is that so many people in this industry, and I've always made it my mission. My mission is to help you manage, motivate, and retain great staff. And now we're going to be dealing with the attraction piece. But as much as we complain about staff, as much as we're lost with what to do, I'm surprised at the small percentage of people that are actually reaching out and taking action to change it. And this is where change comes into the picture, because we're defined by the roles that we've fallen into. And in this industry, we can be, and might be a tough pill for somebody to swallow. They might be like, I'm not watching Julie ever again. And that's okay. But it becomes a really tough pill to think like, I got to swallow making some change here. And am I too sedentary in my life where it's easier for me to sit and complain than it is for me to actually take action, invest some money or invest some time and make the change happen? Because there's so many calls that I get on where it's like, oh my goodness, we don't have the right staff in place. If we had the right staff in place, we can make $4,000 more a month. $4,000 more a month, considering how much time that they've already not made that money. We add up the numbers and it's, multiple thousands, 20,000s. But yet it's like, oh, you say, oh, it's $400 for class. No, thank you. We don't spend money on that. And you're like, oh, what? This is the potential to change everything that you're doing and every way that your business is being run. But you've got to make the investment of time. You've got to make the investment of money to experience a different result.
Well, and I think that there's still a heavy scarcity mindset. And
absolutely. Amen, brother. Yes.
the number one reason that, we don't bring on clients, when I'm saying we, we're referring to my agency, is money. And I'll have the conversations, and there's always a gap of where they are to where they want to be. Sometimes the gap is small. They've got one location, 70 enrollments. They want 85, for example. So 15, okay, that's still a gap, obviously. Other times we have 3 locations and we've got 125 enrollments with capacity of, 400. So the gap is a little bit wider.
Yeah.
And it just is operating from a scarcity mindset. They can't paint the possibility that this could work.
Yeah.
So the same thing with like you can't paint because you just get it ingrained in your mind. Well, I think all the teachers are going to be like this, and they're all going to want to just check their cell phones on all their breaks, and they're going to call in sick on me on a Friday if it's like nice weather. And so that's kind of like you get it in your mind, and you just put it aside. And we've always gotten enough business from open houses and word of mouth, so I don't really think it makes sense to try anything new. But here you are, going home depressed, losing sleep every night, staring at the ceiling because you've now got a second mortgage on your house to keep your center afloat. And it's just real time speak. And both Julie and I we want you to stand the test of time and continue to make this amazing impact. But so I thought that, as Julie had suggested, the topic of change is a perfect one, because now is the time to start making those changes and getting those things in action so you can start to just tip the needle. And even if I did a coaching call this morning, I did a training on leveraging LinkedIn. So it's not my normal training, but I enjoyed it. And they said, well, how do we hit a home run with this strategy? And I said, my strategy isn't to hit a home run. The strategy is to hit singles consistently.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that, and maybe you got to fire your entire staff or start over. And maybe it's you've got to look in the mirror. There's a lot of things that Julie and I have unpacked across our episodes, but a lot of people put their, oh my gosh, we're talking about change, and they think maybe it's going to be a big change, but to me, it's hitting singles consistently, hitting the single, hit it and just starting to just move it. Otherwise, you're going to be. So it's that one book, The 5-Second Rule, I believe. I probably should reread it, but it was
Mel Robbins. Yeah,
the whole concept of if you tell yourself to move or say move. I clearly didn't read the entire book or need to refresh myself, but
I saw Mel Robbins speaking recently. She's pretty brilliant. So
yeah, I think I saw a TED Talk that she did. I think that's where I saw the TED Talk and then bought the book. But same kind of thing. It's just getting yourself out of that little slump and
Yeah.
taking some action.
So, if we look at strategy for change, and what interests me when I study change, and change has always been a fascination of mine. I mean, I was that little girl who came home from school, and mom was painting all the furniture orange, so we went from having this kind of like dark wood color to like now everything's bright orange,
Oh, well.
or yeah, or one time we went away to visit my grandfather who had fallen sick, was in a hospital. My mom took us girls, and we came home, and my dad was there. And out of the blue, all of our family pets were gone. It's like in an instant, all the pets are gone. We left, we came back, everything's changed. So, and this was from a time early on in my life. And you think about these moments of change and how they impact you as an adult. But now as an adult, I look at those lessons that I learned, not to mention divorce and widowhood and all that kind of good stuff that just brings change into your life. But now I seek it. And when I look around at my office at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, what's one thing that I could change? When I go on a business trip or go on a speaking engagement, I'm like, I want things to be different when I come back. I'm seeking that now. So I'm like, what can I change? Because when I come back, I'm going to be a different person. So I want my environment to reflect that. So I'm throwing things out, I'm organizing something, I'm adding something into my environment. So I'm always asking myself, well, what's the one thing that I could change? What's the one thing that would make my environment or my life supportive of who I'm becoming and where I'm going?
It's a great question to ask yourself. No, I like that a lot, and even using you've impacted a lot of positive change in my life from our shows. I mean, I've got the Freedom Master Journal. I think you might have suggested this one also. Start with gratitude.
Yes, that's our gratitude book.
Got that one. So I'm using those. You might have even, I don't know if you suggested this one. Here's another planner that I've been using. I think maybe this was an Instagram ad, but
okay.
Yeah, this one wasn't. This one's got some pretty good stuff, but it's similar to the law of attraction. But I always keep going back to those, as you were saying, kind of the tiny habits, and even just picking one area of your center that you want to focus on for the next couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I've done in the past that it's nothing to do with business, but it everything to do with personal is, so one of my mentors is a guy named Garrett White that owns a company called Wake Up Warrior. Insane business person and just a great, wouldn't put him in the realm of motivation. I mean, he's a motivational speaker, but big on action and systems and routines and things like that. And one of the things that he suggested to start to impact positive change in your life. I'm gonna take another sip of water. The weather keeps changing here in Buffalo.
I hear you. Here too. We had some gorgeous days, and now it's back a little chilly.
Yeah, I think today maybe it's still like 60. Yesterday was 73.
Ooh.
So that was like everyone was crazy. Like everyone was out. Like the whole neighborhood. Everyone's walking their dogs. Everyone's kids are riding bikes. That's one of the only things I'm not a huge fan of. The weather.
Oh.
not a huge fan of the weather, but
I hear you.
The thing that Garrett White would suggest is if you want to impact some positive change with one of your relationships. So let's say you want to do this with one of your directors, one of your teachers. It was simple strategy. So everything that he would talk about would always have a strategy. And that's why, like, there's a lot of great motivational people. Like I love Les Brown and I love listening to him. I know you do as well. He's great to listen to, but he's not necessarily step 1, step 2, step 3, or here's a,
right.
You got to be hungry. I mean, that's it's a great concept and it gets me excited. But in my opinion, the piece that's missing from a lot of the motivational speakers is, okay,
the strategy.
So yeah, how do you actually do that? So what Garrett White suggests is if you pick that one person and you make them your project for the week, and you execute something as simple as a handwritten letter, handwritten note, text message, a little video thing, a voice broadcast or voicemail every single day for 7 to 10 days to that person, of just showing appreciation, love, joy. I'm so grateful to have you on our team. XYZ parent loves that you're taking care of their kids and they said this about you. You refer, like you're just something, and you don't change people. You focus on one one person and you work on improving that relationship. And so I did that with my kids. So it's crazy to even think this. I mean, 10 years ago, every one of my kids has a device, including my 3-year-old. Doesn't have a cell phone, but she has an iPad we made her a iMessage account so that she can FaceTime people. So like I can literally take my cell phone out and send her an audio message that she'll get. And like I sent her one yesterday. Hey, what are you up to? Are you enjoying the nice weather? And she's like, Daddy, I'm not outside yet. I'm not outside right now. We were outside earlier. What are you doing? And it's just that connection. And I'm not sure where I was headed with this, but about just impacting positive change with your team or your relationships.
About picking that one person, and you were picking your daughter.
Yeah, exactly. And this stuff works. And as Julie said earlier, I think far too often we get into the zone of just complaining, and I've been there, and some days I'm still there. I'm like,
right.
I can't believe my team member did this. They cost me all this money by this mistake. And
in nature.
Yeah. So I'm surely not perfect.
Right.
But if you're focusing on taking some of that energy and looking at implementing some positive actions, or what can you do better to start to move the change needle, I promise you it'll start to impact your life and your center a lot more positively.
And I think relationships are a huge thing to start working on. And I love the idea that you were sharing. And I want to extend that idea also to your clients, because what I experience a lot with the clients that we work with is the owners don't have a lot of really good, solid relationships with their clientele. And personally, I can imagine that. I can imagine signing people up for my programs and not really knowing like who they are and what their struggles are, and when they're happy and when they're celebrating. I can imagine that, because it's a very personal relationship that I have with my clients who sign up with our programs. But a lot of times we enroll families and we leave it for our director to build relationships. And no offense to our directors out there, but directors can take relationships with them wherever they go. Meaning if the owner entrusts the director only to build those relationships, the director leaves, those parents might follow. So if you're an owner and you really want to retain your families, make sure that you are building relationships. And I love picking one parent, what Michael was sharing, and doing the same thing, where you pick one parent and you leave a voicemail, you write a note, you ask them out to lunch, whatever it might be, so that you can really focus on building that positive relationship with each one of your clients.
And what he suggests is he'll start to then execute this daily, and he continues to do it daily. He does it with his wife and his kids every single day.
Wow.
And he's part of his program is called like the Core 4, and like there's certain steps that you should be executing every day if you want to, he says, kind of get on fire. So there's body being balanced business. It sounds like a commercial for him, but his stuff is it's the best stuff that I personally have ever seen. And when I started my first agency way back when I was, this was almost 20 years ago. I was working with speakers, authors, coaches, and consultants for like 10 years. And one of the advantages and things that I loved about it, and I made it a requirement more so selfishly, but I said, you have to send me all of your stuff. So if you become a client of mine and I want every one of your products, every one of your books. So some speakers had a few things, and back then everyone had, CDs, DVDs. I think one guy sent me audio cassettes. He had a course on
VHS tapes.
Create Your Soulmate Now is his book.
Cool.
I'm using the law of attraction to find your soulmate. And when he sent me his course, I believe it was cassette tapes or something. But there's a lot. There's so much great stuff out there. And I've always said the right book in the right hands at the right time can change your life forever.
Absolutely.
It's the same thing with just the right piece of content, and it's just picking something that works for you. But I think our message for today for you, and we'll start to wrap up in a minute or two here. We're also trying to kind of keep these a little bit tighter to 30 minutes or so. I know that people's schedules change and things like that. So we value everyone's time and figured we'd aim to kind of keep them a little bit shorter and
give you some nuggets.
Yeah, give you some nuggets rather than 3 hours on one strategy. So
yes.
it's just picking that thing that's going to work for you, and picking that one area that you want to focus on, whether it's you want to attract the right staff. What has to change in order for that to happen? Do you want to grow your center enrollment wise? What is one thing? I mean, there's probably 10 things. So your signage isn't great out front, or there's a missing letter, or your website's terrible, or you have bad Google reviews, or there's one of many, many different things, but pick one and move it.
And also think about, where do you feel resistance? Like in your heart of hearts, where do you feel like, I don't want to do that? And that might be the area that you really need to dive into. Like, I know we're coming up with tax season, and maybe the change that you need to make is getting everything done sooner and faster, because time does fill what we allow for it to fill. So if we say we have a deadline in 2 months, it's going to be like, oh, we're dragging it out. But see what you can change, and maybe it becomes a less painful process. But also, when it comes to change, I want to throw 2 big nuggets out there, is you have to be aligning yourself with the thoughts that will support where you want to go. So you really have to be thinking thoughts inside of your head that are things that you would think if you've already achieved that new thing. So if you're living in a messy workspace, but you want a clean workspace, you really have to start thinking thoughts that say, I love my workspace. I love how easily I find things. So you have to align yourself with those thoughts. And in order to do that, the second thing I want to impart you with is vision. We talk about vision a lot, but it's the same thing that's true when you're going through change. And I've worked with organizations that were closing down centers, they were closing down sites, and they called me in, they flew me in to present to their entire team to help them make the announcement. And what we do with the organization is cultivate a powerful vision. So even people who don't know if they have a job are like dancing their way out of there when we do our dancing at the end, because they're so sold on what the vision is. So even with every little change that you want to make in your life, sell yourself on a vision, sell yourself on how much time you're going to save by having an organized space, or how happy you're going to be by having the right relationships built with the right people who will truly support your childcare program success. So really think about aligning yourself with the right thoughts and cultivating a vision for whatever it is that you're trying to change. And then do one little thing that's going to prompt you to change every single day. 5 minutes. What's one thing that you could change that would take 5 minutes that in a month's time will add up to a nice change that you would like to see come into fruition in your life?
Oh, that was very, very powerful. Do you have, and I know you, like me, you love to read.
Yeah.
Do you have a book that you would suggest? So we often talk about vision, law of attraction, mindset, et cetera. I know there's a lot of books that we both have recommended over the last 6 to 12 months, but is there a book that comes to mind that our listeners should grab?
About change?
Yeah, about change. I was trying to come up with one when we were talking as well.
And it's funny, when I was thinking about doing my podcast this morning, or my online show about change, I'm like, oh, well, what are the best-selling books out there on change? And I didn't find, I know John Maxwell has one, but I didn't find a whole lot of others. So I don't know if I have one I could recommend on change right here, right now. But what I do find is nuggets in every book I read. I'm looking at what point in somebody's life were they impacted by change that was instant and was sudden, and it required them to do something different. So a book that I've mentioned before that I think is incredible is In Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And if you read anything on the Holocaust, if you read anything on the Nazi death camps, I mean, these people were like just removed from their home in like an instant. It's like, oh, now you're living in this nice, luxurious home. Now you're stripped of everything, including your clothing, and you're in a camp. How did these people deal with that? And I love to get inside of the minds to say, well, how did they move forward? So with Viktor Frankl, it was a lot about gratitude. It was a lot about your perspective, because your perspective is what can keep you a prisoner or set you free. And it's all in the starting place of your mind.
Love it.
So I would really encourage In Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It would be an amazing book. But, one of the things that I used to read a lot was the Success magazine, and I would look for success stories in there and say, okay, at what point did something change where a person had to really move forward in a different way than they had previously? And that's what life and that's what change requires us to do.
This book has Man Search for Meaning has 29,000 5-star reviews. Wow, that's insane.
See, I know what I'm talking about once in a while.
I'm going to have to add this to my Kindle and get it ordered.
You know, and even in our best-selling Childcare Business Success book, you know, the stories that we told in there were all stories of change, of, you know, people whose businesses were on the urge of collapsing, or people who were trying to make their child program work with $5,000 credit card, in different situations. So I really look for these moments of change to say, okay, they hit change. Then what did they do? What was the thing that really turned it over for them? Because also there's studies like of prisoners, people who are in prison for so many years. And you saw this in Shawshank Redemption, if I don't butcher the name of that, where it's like you're in prison for so many years, you get out and you have freedom, and all you do is contemplate going back in because you don't know how to function in a different world, in a different way with the changes that are in front of you. So that's why the constant change is so important to incorporate. You don't want people just to become boxed in their classrooms. You know, so if we're looking at teachers, you got to say, you know what? By you getting the opportunity to spend time in different classrooms, you are sharing your brilliance with all of our students here, and really put that positive spin on change.
Love it. I think we'll leave it there. We promised we'll leave it there. That's a great great place to end.
Yeah, well, let's make sure we get your information out there too, Michael. Where people can find out more about you.
Sure, the usual. So if you haven't tuned in before, we're a digital marketing agency that focuses on driving what we call enrollments on demand, and it's just localchildcaremarketing.com. So always happy to help, and please make sure that you hop into Julie's website. She's got books, she's got courses, other Facebook groups. We're both simply here to serve and help as many childcare professionals as we possibly can. That's all that both of us do all day, every day.
And if you're really, really ready to make change happen, especially when it comes to staff and the kinds of people that you're attracting, whether you're attracting people who are no-shows to interviews, or people who are no-show to work, or people who don't last for longer than a week on the job, come, take our free masterclass, childcarebusinesssuccess.com, and let me guide you through strategies and mindset shifts that will help pull the right people into you. Let's make a change. Let's change this in this industry.
I'm going to go listen to that Michael Jackson, Be the Change, or what I know he's got Man in the Mirror, but I'm thinking of another song that he has about change. So
yeah.
Love it.
There's a few of them out there.
Yeah, that is for sure.
And if you are here tuning in and you've got some benefit from this, say hello. Let us know that you're here, whether you're live or tuning into the replay. We'd love to interact with you and have the opportunity to say hello back.
Love it. Well, have a fantastic rest of your week, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed today's episode on change. I enjoyed the content quite a bit. I get just as much out of these, always as my wheels turn and my brain moving. We'll be back here for you next week. And Julie and I can help you. Please feel free to reach out, leave some comments, share some love.
And remember, a change will do you good.
Love it. That's our quote for that. I almost forgot to end with the quote, so we got it. Love it.
All right.
Have a good Thursday, everyone. Talk to you guys soon.
Bye.